Also the co-founder of CWAS, which is quite famous in green entrepreneurship, and whoever knows us knows that we're close colleagues. But Johannes is in this panel because he's unstoppable when it comes to thinking outside the box to develop green solutions. And he has done that from Switzerland to the Middle East to Southern Africa to many other regions in the world. And he will talk about some cases that will definitely inspire us. Then we have someone who is quite a famous name in the green and clean tech entrepreneurship scene, not only in Lebanon, but in the region, Ramy Boujawdeh, who is, I think, truly green at heart, and who also is an expert when it comes to environmental and climate topics, who is a farmer, and last but not least, who is the CEO of Berytech, an organization whose bread and butter is it to build businesses, build SMEs. Now, Ramy will talk a bit on how that support works and will give us great examples. Then we have Dr. Lieve Fransen, which I think is a special case because she shows how you can bring and mix so many disciplines to develop green solutions for the sector. So she is mixing a medical background with transformative technologies, with experience in private and public sector, with policy work, and she is wearing two hats today as the co-founder of the Platform for Transformative Technologies and as the senior advisor to the European Policy Center for Health, Social and Migration Policies. And then last but not least, we have Mohamed, who is here representing a powerhouse, actually two. I think the first one is Egypt, because who knows the region and who knows the market knows that Egypt is buzzing when it comes to opportunities in green sectors and a high potential market that is very promising. But Mohamed is also here as the representative of PRIMA, an organization that is quite known for research and innovation in the Mediterranean region, specifically also when it comes to environmental sectors. Now, these are our four panelists, and what we'll be doing is we'll hear an input from them back to back, and afterwards we'll open up for a more lively discussion with some follow-up questions. So let's get started. Johannes is the first one on stage. And as I mentioned, Johannes has initiated tons of projects, ideas, innovations from the water sector to the logistics sector, and he will tell us how such things get started. Johannes, please.
Thank you, and I would say, wow, such an energizing, introduction of us. I'm really looking forward, to the next hour, and I hope you also get energized by us. Myself, as soon as we have then probably our presentations on the screen. Tech, please. Yes. Oh, yes, that's the right one. I would like to start with some good news, and I think good news are so important in a world of permacrisis, as I would call it. In the last 3 decades, I had the luck to meet and support hundreds of green impact entrepreneurs, women, men really having a passion to change the world. And, just here you see our Hall of Fame in Switzerland, just showcasing, some of the enterprises we were able to work with. This kind of work with startups or enterprises in the acceleration phase is a really rewarding thing for me. I just give you 3 examples now here. These kind of enterprises, and I think as you said, Aline, we cover a wide range, different sectors. If you start here from the left-hand side, the center, looking into the challenge of, nutrition, putting insects, on the table, on really also on the table of high-quality restaurants in Switzerland. And then the second one, climatery. Wet rice production actually is causing methane problems, and this contributes to climate change. And actually, this startup looks into new ways to produce in a climate-sound way rice. In the middle, this guy, you know, he has been standing just some minutes ago, Karim Hassan, who founded Karim 8 years ago, I think, Benin, you know, really looking into capacitating the next generation. And I think that's for me so extreme important because it's the next generation which will change. Probably, no, it will, you know, they will change the world in a good way. I think that's so important. It's not probably our generation. If I look around, I think we are a little bit mixed, a little bit next gen, a little bit this gen and so, but you know, Karim Hassan with Benin, he is still contributing, you know, to make this happening. Then you have two guys, Wasser for Wasser, one was a professional soccer, looking into, say, bottled water can be replaced by just, you know, actually carafe water in the restaurants, collecting money and channel it then into innovative water supply and sanitation systems or services in Africa and Eastern Africa. And finally, Bogdan, you know, a guy in Ukraine running an eco-center south of Kiev and helping the people to get proper and sustainable sanitation. You know, what connects all the five examples here? What connects it? Just think about shortly. You know, we are all challenge-based. We are all looking, you know, at a certain problem which has to be solved. So you could say, you know, it's like the resource of the business development and it's the basis of a business model means to transfer a challenge into an opportunity. And this brings it to a project I was luckily able to develop and also implement myself in Switzerland. It's a pretty strange project. You know, what you see here is a greenhouse. It's a tropical greenhouse where we produce, in Switzerland, you know, in the Swiss Alps, tropical fruit and tropical fish. You know, the basis of a challenge cloud around it is, you know, the big resource field of industrial waste heat, available nearly all over the world. In this specific case, we use here the industrial waste heat of natural gas pipelines, specifically, you know, the gas densification stations which are needed to pump, you know, to make actually the gas being able to be transported. You know, it started as a kind just a production place, and step by step we learned, you know, that this kind of a strange thing really turned into kind of an innovation trigger, showing people that, you know, you can do things, even if they look at the very beginning a little bit strange, but you can make it happen. And you can also make it profitable, and you can really change something. This is also part of a new regional policy in Switzerland, where we look how, you know, say, economically weaker areas or areas, regions of Switzerland can be promoted and supported in their growth. Nowadays, you know, 10,000 of people are visiting the place, and there is a nice restaurant, and you can, of course, taste, and you can buy the food. But, you know, it's actually based on a waste resource. It's based on a challenge. When we talk about, you know, green impact, and, you know, that's for me a bit the difference. It's not just a green thing, it's also impacting, because it's challenge, it's problem related. When we talk about the green impact world, you know, we really also have to make sure everybody is talking about scaling, you know, growing, but we have to be careful because, you know, in a finite world, we cannot just grow because we have limited resources, and then we have to say that we really have to put the focus on business developments where a real need is existing, like sanitation here, and where, you know, the needed resources to make it run are renewable. Otherwise, we will later or earlier run into a problem, and then we will just shift the problems in time and space. And I think that's not what I consider to be neither sustainable nor impact related. Now, it's also about money, and it's about returns, and you know, it's pretty interesting. You know, I have been visiting several events of impact, green impact investors, and that's a strange situation then when the people say, I would like to invest into impact, but I want 15% returns. That's just not working. And I think, you know, here we are talking, when we talk about, you know, challenge and problem, you know, impact-oriented green business, we really have to see, we are not talking necessarily about cash cows, and we are not, you know, talking about business models which show very high return. This means that probably we have also to actually, well, to change the concept of impact investing, and I just call it, you know, this new way, the PPII, you know, the private public impact investment. And so I think here public and private investors have just to join forces, you know, to make things happen. Where then probably the private, you know, investor being a little bit more agile can open new leads, can open new sectors to invest in, where then the public one can join and probably also help to scale things in a sound way. Well, ecosystem, of course, ecosystem development, you know, creating an enabling environment is very important. I would like to ask you, who of you, then you probably could just shortly stand up, it's also kind of an energizer, who of you considers him or herself being part of an enabling ecosystem for green business development? Who thinks? Hands, well, super, already. Of course, I would like to see a little bit more hands actually up there, but I know, today it's the day where we probably can also change things, and in the future, you know, Karen will organize another conference next year, probably even more hands will actually raise. So I think that's very important to have this ecosystem. But with that, and I will come to actually the end of my presentation, it's about us here. It's about you. I think, you know, we have to share the responsibility, you know, policymakers, you know, business developers, you know, business service supporters, you know, it's about us. Because if you don't start, if you don't really also invest, not only money, but, you know, human resources into the really, you know, into the promotion of green impact businesses, you know, it will not happen. And I would like to close with one, just, you know, I cite here, Rola Dashti. Yesterday she said, you know, at the very end of her introductory presentation, nothing is impossible. And I think this is what we just should take with us today and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johannes. I hope that passion was contagious for everyone. Ramy, I think you might be responsible for the largest number of support programs for green entrepreneurs in the region. Full credit for that. Can you tell us more what type of businesses you see most potential in, what type of support do they need, and how do you finance them to grow?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see this big crowd here in a morning session, so that means we're all committed to making a change, especially a green change. Can I have my presentation up, please? Okay, so let's talk about the entrepreneurship in the Arab region and how can we move it into a greener economy. So there has been a number of programs during the last few years that are supporting green entrepreneurship. If I go back in time, and definitely this is not a comprehensive list, there have been a number of programs that really impacted a big group of entrepreneurs in different parts of the world. Now, most of them are focused on the Mediterranean area, a bit about the Levant, very little about GCC, but I'm sure there's more and more happening there. So the first one is SwitchMed, and I think many of the people who are entrepreneurs here have been a switcher or been influenced by a switcher at a certain point, where the focus was really to inspire idea stage people, you know, idea stage entrepreneurship to move from an idea into a potential prototype, into some implementation and so on. Then, a few years back, we had the team of CWAS coming in and saying, why don't we start in the Middle East? And they started working on WASH. There has been a lot of innovation around water and how can we look at it as an opportunity for young people to really change the way we look at water, WASH, and so on. And now they are here across multiple countries, really inspiring others to scale in all the green economy. Then we have another regional program that came in, which is the NECBC Med, which is, again, a European-funded Mediterranean program that is tackling 4 aspects. 2 of them are really linked to the green economy. One is focused on innovation, entrepreneurship, and change. Another one is about climate change and green economies. And through those programs, we see a lot of work happening around building the ecosystem, working around enabling environment, supporting idea stage entrepreneurs, working on living labs to really influence triple helix or quadruple helix approaches to really push the sector forward. 2016, in Berytech, we started Agritech. And that was also a need to push the sector forward, to bring in innovators in different disciplines, because multidisciplinary actions for climate change, for green innovation is very important. Jordan has Hassad, which is also an accelerator for green and agriculture innovation. PRIMA will be talked about by Dr. Wageih, but PRIMA is also working a lot on pushing the agri-food sustainability agenda for the region, using research and innovation to push it forward. The other two programs that I'm going to talk about maybe more in details are Cleanergy, which focuses on clean technology innovation and scaling up those technologies, and Water and Energy for Food, which is a regional program for scale-ups. And I think scale-ups is also a word that we've heard yesterday that we need to talk about today, that there is more need to scale up our green innovations from the region. So, for an entrepreneurship ecosystem to scale, there is a need to build that funnel. And I think all of us has a role to play in that funnel. A lot of people who are in the space of entrepreneurship, usually for scaling up, come from higher education, universities, and so on, and we have a lot of youth in the region. I think yesterday we saw a big number of university students that will hit the market, and they are looking for opportunities to scale. There's also the culture of entrepreneurship that we need to build all together. With that, we come through programs that will get those ideas to move into reality. From reality, it moves to scale up, for investments that Johannes talked about, and for building and scaling those businesses with programs like the Water and Energy for Food and other programs where we're helping those businesses scale, grow, and raise capital so that they can impact the biggest number of people that live in our region. Focusing down on agriculture as an area that is a core component of the green economy, we know that our food system is challenged in the region. And we know that we have water scarcity, we have population growth and urbanization. A lot of our big cities are being crowded and more crowded. Climate change is a major challenge for the region. Conflict and migration, unfortunately, is still happening and growing. Changing lifestyles and diets, uncertain energy prices, and environmental degradation are all happening in our region. And for that, we need to act, and act now. So, with that, one of the programs that we're managing at Berytech with our partner CWAS, with EOMI, and with Chemonix Egypt, across 10 countries in the region, tackle scaling up those innovators. We're working from Morocco all the way to Yemen with different innovators that are really willing and wanting and aiming and doing change in the region. So, okay, we're missing a couple of slides. Am I on time or I'm behind?
You're on time.
Still? I have time still? Okay, great. So I'm going to talk here about a couple of innovators that we're supporting through this program. One of them is called Mouzara. For people who come from Egypt, do you know Mouzara? Anybody knows Mouzara? Okay, few, okay. So Mouzara is a very promising startup that is just in the process of raising more than $10 million in fundraising. Yes, green entrepreneurship is a business that can scale and can raise impact. And can raise impact investment, they can raise serious money because what they're doing is changing what we want. Mouzara is a platform, is an app. And we know that more and more people, even in rural communities, have a phone that could help them scale. And what they've done is that they aggregated a lot of the smallholder farmers. They provided them a voice so that they can negotiate prices and learn about how they can, grow what is needed in the market. They are providing them extension services quickly and efficiently for them to work together. And they're working with them on solutions to finance their operations so that they can grow their business, provide solutions that are available, and scaling them. So that's a solution that is typically not very costly. The penetration into that market is relatively limited, and the return on investment for the farmers is huge. Another solution that we're working on and supporting is called SOIT. And SOIT use remote sensing, drones, and satellite imagery to optimize the use of water in those communities. So with the fact that we're working with SOIT, SOIT is now working in Morocco, in Tunisia, in Egypt, and is focusing on a number of countries in Africa where, using their solutions and technology, they are able to help a lot of farmers, medium and large, and sometimes small, depending on the aggregation, to produce more with less. So with that, they are producing much better crops with less water use, and less energy use so that they can produce and make triple bottom line. The farmers are able to grow more, so their return is higher. They're able to produce with less energy, so are more sustainable, and they're creating economical and social and environmental impact on the community they're in. With that, I will move to the last slide, which is recommendations. It takes time to build an ecosystem. So let's act fast, act smart, and break silos. Innovation requires multidisciplinary approach. For people that are in policy making, for people that are in different departments in ministries, for people that are working on a particular sector, open up to others. You can use the engineers, the social scientists, the computer scientists, and so on. Bring them in, and let's co-create the future that we want in the region. Consider different solutions, and many of them could be frugal and could make a huge impact. One of our entrepreneurs, which is Compost Belly, is Mark here? Probably. So Compost Belly, one of our entrepreneurs, along with many others, are working on composting. And composting is not necessarily very high tech, but it requires a bit of science, and it requires some logistics. But when you look at the soil content and the challenges in the soil in our region, if we can add compost and optimize it, we can have much better yield and much better soil health that could help us produce more and work on circularity. Unlocking finance to scale-ups, because we want to make sure that those scale-ups can hit a bigger number of people and make change in the economy. Enhance awareness of vulnerable communities, including women, to climate change, effect, and risk, and teach them how to adapt to new ways using those technologies. So by releasing finance, by working on educating people that are in those communities where most of the climate will impact them, we can do much more and change. And let's work on the enabling environment, not only top-down, but bottom-up, because the people that are on the ground can tell us a lot more on how we can react to their needs and change. With that, I thank you all. Thank you, Aline.
Thank you, Ramy, especially for the examples. I think you got us very curious, and we want to hear more in a bit. Lieve, can I ask you to the stage, please? You are coming in with a global European perspective, which I think is interesting to learn from, but also if some of you might want to expand to that region. And it would be great if you can tell us which technologies you think are transformative for the green sector, and also how policies can support in developing and adopting these.
Looks black. Good morning, everybody. Maybe I can have my slides. Anyway, good morning. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very honored to be in this panel. I'm learning every day here, so I hope that I can give you something back also. And my experience and my expertise is quite different in a way. Once in a while, they call me an intrapreneur as a policymaker, because there are also policymakers that like to change things and transform things, and that's my place, I think. Aline, I'm not going to talk about which transformative technologies there are, because there are many, but I would like to explain a little bit how we work in the platform for transformative technologies, but also in the European Commission for the moment in that area. So we scout basically for transformative technologies, starting with the problems. And the problems we identify are the SDGs and climate. These are the problems that we focus on. That's already a lot of problems in a way. And we identify the technological solutions that can help to solve the problem. And the technological solutions, we bring them into an ecosystem, because there's not one technology that can solve everything, but it's a grouping, a cluster of technologies that brought together, like you do in CWAS, I think, on water, for example. So there's that's what will bring the transformation, because we're not just into innovation, but we are into transformation. Because we believe that, and I think a lot of people together with us, and a lot of here in the room probably, that incremental improvements of existing technologies will really not be sufficient to reach the targets that we set ourselves globally. So that's the task. So we do that sector by sector or ecosystem by ecosystem, depending. From water, textiles, we've done a big exercise on textiles. And I think for some people in the region here, that might be also important. And if some of you are interested in the experience on textiles, I'm ready to share with you, because I think some in the region and in Europe and worldwide, I think there's going to be a major transformation in textile. And I would be sad not to have this region be part of it. But I would like to talk a little bit further on health. As Aline said, I'm a medical doctor. I worked for a long time as a medical doctor, a policy maker. And I think very often we forget that major sector when we talk about environment and green. And so I would like to give you a little bit of an explanation on there. Because what we saw is change happens, even if we don't want to make the change happen. The change that happened, wait, this doesn't work. The change that happened with COVID, for example, was groundbreaking. And we didn't expect it, but for health, I was working in India in the middle of the epidemic, and we created and we scaled up very rapidly telehealth. And telehealth is here to stay. And I think there's a lot of startups that worked with me in India to really make that work. And I hope that that is going to move further also into new transformative technologies, including metaverse, AI, blockchain, and things like this. So there's a lot of opportunities also in this region for this. Then waste, health waste. Waste in general, but health waste also increased drastically around COVID for all kinds of reasons that you can imagine, from the masks to the vaccines to the whatever. And waste is a danger for health, but it's actually the healthcare waste is the second more hazardous waste. And I'm sure this region, I was in Oman, they were also very much working on waste in general. So for this region, this is also very important, I think. And there's a range of technologies that can deal with that waste, but not only deal with that waste, but also change it into value, change it into energy. One startup that I was working with in Europe, and that is growing quite quickly, is working on pyrolysis. And it's heating organic material in absence of oxygen. And it's a very interesting, it produces actually the energy that the hospitals can then use positively. So this is not a green business, but it's an interesting business for greening the economy in general. Pharmaceutical sector, small and big, have neglected environment issues. And very often they are excused because it's good for health and we are happy already that our health is improving. But we also, I think it's the separation between health and environmental policy is really dangerous. And there is a major opportunity. Some big companies and some startups, and some mainly working together, startups with big companies, really have made a change possible already, but not enough. One of the issues that I've been working on also, and can be important also in this region, is localization of production. The market should be global, but the production can be local. That decreases the environmental impact, but you need to have a global market or a larger market than just your country very often. So that is, for me, a very important message that we learned also during the COVID epidemic. And finally, many of you probably have received vaccines, the mRNA vaccines. They were invented by startups, actually. They become much bigger than startups for the moment, but in a very short time. So there's opportunities there. And my message is also there are major opportunities. And mRNA, although we said this is a technology for the West, this is not true. This is much cheaper to build. It's much better for the environment. It costs 10 million for a facility to build, and other vaccine companies or vaccine facilities require at least 100 million. So there's an opportunity there. And there's an opportunity to grow fast because it's not only for COVID, but it's also valid for a lot of other diseases that will be developed. So a call on the startups to work also in this area. Then finally, I would like to say a few points on, I think, on policies. That's really where I've worked my whole life on policies in a way to make change happen, because technologies, transformative technologies are not enough. The policies have to be in place, the services have to be in place. We will talk later on the different policies that need to be in place, but I would like to just highlight one that I've not heard very much about for the moment, is intellectual property as an asset to make investments sustainable, attractive, and predictable. If you are a startup and you have innovation, you could patent it, or you can defend your intellectual property rights. And very often, startups, also in Europe, we've worked on this, have not done this because they think mainly about growth and they don't use their IP as an asset. So my plea would be for some of you and the services that you provide also is to think about this, because that will be more make you more attractive for investors and will protect your assets much better in a way to not have to sell out. A lot of European companies have to sell out because they forget to do this. So we set up a service for them to support their IP with vouchers, for example, that they pay back once they make, so it doesn't all have to be paid by the service. And then finally, the two policies that I think I've not heard enough about is data. And how you deal with privacy, population data, and in health, this is very important, but it's also important. Data is the gold of this time. This is really what is the money, in a way, is the data for the moment. And we're working on projects with fair data. I don't have time to explain to this, but the issue is that you need to own your own data. Don't sell out on your data. Data are important. And you can have a system where you can allow others to come and get your data or get access to the information in your data without giving out the data. And I think that's for health very important, but also in a lot of areas. And then finally, we made very often a mistake, and I'm very happy here that the Minister of Industry has introduced the conference and has such a major role to play, because for health and a lot of other areas, we need industrial policy more than health policy sometimes to make the change happen. And so that's my last message. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieve, and thank you for also showing us how on-the-ground work is connected with policy work, and that we can use both to inform the other. Thank you, Mohamed. We have been missing one angle so far, and this is the one on research and innovation. And you will come in on that now. It would be great if you can tell us a bit on what PRIMA has achieved over the last years, or what was also challenging to achieve, and what you think are the innovations we should be looking out for.
Sure. Thank you so much, Aline. Wow, the view from here, it's wonderful. The hall is almost full. Good morning to all of you. First, allow me to thank ESCO and Karim for the kind invitation and for the successful summit. In the next minutes, I'm going to take you in a quick journey about what is PRIMA. In my presentation, it's divided between two parts. First, message to the policymakers, and the second half, some inspirational examples for the startups and the SMEs. So first question, what is PRIMA? Some years ago, the European Commission and the Mediterranean countries has very interesting discussions about the main common challenges facing the EU and the Mediterranean countries, such as already Ramy already shed the light on many of them, such as the climate change. We all know that our region is one of the most vulnerable regions in the world affected by the global warming. the high population rate, which reflect as well on the high unemployment rate, especially among youth and women, as the most marginalized groups in our countries, as well as the classic problems or challenges such as the food insecurity, water scarcity, energy deficiency, and losing the biodiversity, and so on. So after this deep discussion, the European Commission and the 19 participating states come out in 2017 with an agreement to launch a program called PRIMA, with a total investment allocated for this program, €500 million over 10 years, starting from 2018 till 2028. You can see here we have 19 countries, 6 of them are Arab states, and I'm going to go on the details of these countries and their performance. So for the structure of the program, it is divided or split into 2 sections based on the source of finance. We have section 1 with the total allocated budget up to €220 million comes directly from the European Commission. So we are applying the EU regulations of participation. The second half of the program, which is section 2, with a total cumulative budget up to €274 million, and it comes from the 22 national funding agencies participating in PRIMA, such as the Higher Council and SRSF in Jordan, the CNRS in Lebanon, ASRT and STDF in Egypt, and so on. And they are applying the national rules of participation, and this is very important, so please put it aside because we will come back to it later. So you can scan this code. Don't worry, it is not a vaccination code for COVID vaccination, but it is the analytical tool that we developed so you can access this data. You can go to the PRIMA website and you can start retrieving and filtering and play with the data to see some analysis and information about the program performance. I will not go to the details, but I just want to focus on the main indicators and then split it between the performance of Section 1 and Section 2 and the achievements of the private sectors and SMEs for these 2 sections. So far, after the first 4 cycles, we managed to fund 168 projects with a total investment 225.7 million so far. For Section 1, we have 53 funded projects, and you can see that 31% of all funds of Section 1 goes to the private sector, which might be accepted and good indication. But for Section 2, we have only 12% of the budget of Section 2 goes to the private sector. So this maybe pop up or alert us about the participation of the private sector to Section 2. Let's dive deeper to the Arab states. As I said that we have 6 Arab states participating in PRIMA: Algeria, Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, Morocco, and Tunisia. So let's see the performance of the private sector for the Arab states between the 2 sections. Section 1, as I said, we are applying the rules of the European Commission. So if you start your business yesterday, if you are a profit making, you are still eligible to participate for Section 1. For Section 2, they are applying the national regulations, and it depends and different from country to country. So to see the performance of the private sector, we can see that around 1/3 of the fund of Section 1 goes to the private sector, while it is less than 10% of the grants in Section 2 goes to the private sector, and it is even much less for the small, medium-sized enterprises. But why we have this phenomena or difference between the 2 sections? It is the same program, the same evaluation procedure, more or less the same topics, the same SMEs, and the same countries. This reminds us with one of the old inherited problems that we have in our countries, which is that some national regulations are not so open for the profit-making organizations or for the private sector. We keep talking about bridging the gap between academia and industry, public-private partnership, but we need maybe to revise our national regulations in order to be more open for these startups. Now I will shed the light on some of the green businesses that or green projects that we funded under PRIMA and the role or the participation of the SMEs. The first question is would be why the SMEs would participate in such international cooperative projects. Maybe because they want to get access to financial support, but not only that, but also to technological solutions, to get access to some networks or extra markets, to increase their profitability and to create more jobs, especially the green ones, to foster their research and innovation competencies and capacities, to scale up and out their business in a sustainable manner, and to generate positive environmental and socioeconomic impact. What are the rules or activities in the projects? It's different from project to another, but we can summarize it into adaptation and developing new technological solutions and products, testing, validating, and upscaling those solutions, and very important to help the private and academic sector in the commercialization and studying the local market in order to penetrate to the local and to the regional market. And for sure, the cross-cutting activities such as dissemination, communication, exploitation, or especially the key exploitable results of the projects, and for the project management and final reporting. I will give you just one concrete example about one of the success stories that we have in PRIMA, which is a project called Dynamine SME. It's a consortium of 10 partners from 6 countries, 3 from the north and 3 from the southern and eastern part of the Mediterranean, with a total investment €2 million. The project is handling one of the problematic challenges that we have, especially in Egypt, that after you produce the milk and cheese, you will have the whey or shirsh al-laban. So they used to throw it to the Niles or to the rivers, to the canals, and to the sea. So the project is trying to have an value-adding products from this whey. So it will have 2 dual environmental positive impact. First, to use the cheese and milk byproducts to produce new value-added dairy products such as infants enriched formula of protein. But this is not enough because they invented as well a new spray drying technology that will use 30% less energy. They are also planning to make this technology affordable to the small farmers and small producers at the countryside in our region. So it will it will increase the income and the profit making for those startups and for those small producers. My last slide, my presentation is like the takeaways or the final recommendations, and it can be shared between the entrepreneurs and the policy and decision makers. First, we need to open up our mind and our eyes to shift our mindset to see the challenges as green business opportunities. We need to advance our local and regional infrastructure and facilities. We need to improve the healthiness of our national regulations and framework to be more affordable to the profit-making organizations and to the enterprises and SMEs. We need to improve our capacities and to expand our networks. Last but not least, to get access to more and diverse financial resources. It is very important not to tackle each one of these as silos or separate angles, but to address in a holistic approach because you cannot just address one dimension. Thank you so much for your attention, and just for your info that in January 2023, we are planning to launch the new call of PRIMA, so you are all welcome to participate on this. Thank you so much and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohamed, for this very realistic and practical insight to what PRIMA does. Now, this was a pool of information, and I know that each of you has a lot more to share. And for the last around 15 minutes, I have a few small follow-up questions. And maybe I start backwards. I start actually with Mohamed and Lieve, because I have a question that maybe you two could briefly speak to. You were talking about policies and regulatory frameworks, and we know that the environmental sector is quite heavily regulated, but it's also not really looking yet at green SMEs, private sector, and how can they best work and have feasible solutions being brought into the market. Now, I think we have a lot of governments in this region for whom this is a new priority. How do you see we can best work on changing that process on that level? Because I think this is what all of us know needs to happen, but it's long-term and it's challenging. So how would you go about that?
Okay. Thank you so much, Alan, for this interesting question. So I will start with a word called resilience. It is important to change our mindset. I'm here talking for the startups as well as for the decision makers. We all know that we were suffering a lot during the time of COVID, and once we just trying to recover back, we have been hit with the Ukrainian war. We are always, we can notice this high inflation rate, the economic global crisis, all these challenges. So it is a transformative momentum to take the advantage of this time in order to change our mindset as well as our regulations and national regulations. Just to share with you that some years ago, before joining PRIMA, I was involved in one of the EU projects. We were analyzing more than 1,000 social innovation practices and social entrepreneurial ideas all over the world. And we noticed a phenomena in the region that at the time of the revolution or the Arab Spring in 2011, there was an uprising or booming in the social activities, because it seemed that the people start taking the initiative because of this financial crisis that we have at that time, the instability, all these aspects. So it may give you more fear to start business, but in fact it was the opposite. Many startups has started and initiated their business at the time of crisis. This is very important. And I remember a speech or a quote from the IBM CEO. He said that growth and comfort do exist or coexist together. So we need to take the advantage of this moment in order to start new businesses. And my second point, I think already Ramy as well mentioning this, to consider the different forms of innovation. It is not just a technological innovation. In our PRIMA projects, we have different sources of innovation, even inside our call text. Every year we highlighted frugal innovation, grassroots innovation, organization innovation, business innovation, and so on. What else? Okay, maybe this is for the moment, and then we come back later.
That's great. Thank you, Mohamed. Lieve, would you like to add on that point?
I would like to add one concern and one thing that I think this region could benefit even more than what you have for the moment. But of course, I'm not a good judge because I'm learning while I'm here. I've been in a few other conferences and a few other setups in this region. But my experience, a recent experience with a global entrepreneurs center, where we do transformative innovation, right? But transformative innovation is what I think is needed even more. Is that each entrepreneur and each startup, each small business needs a different kind of service, but they all need something. Some need access to, and I have a review of what they needed, and it goes from access to a carbon market to obtain carbon credits, for example, to access to funds where they are relevant, to access to target setting, to savings on energy, water, and material use. So we did a review of all of the entrepreneurs, asking what they needed first. Online personalized marketing, for example. Non-financial sustainability and impact reporting, the reporting that is needed, sometimes quite complex in the EU sometimes. So there's a range of things. And our conclusion, in a way, our solution was to regroup these services and make access possible to the entrepreneurs for the different services they needed over time. Because what the service they need is different, or you need, is different with time. And so the service is kind of accompanying, not just giving funds and let go, or giving advice and let go, but accompany the entrepreneur over time until they fly on their own, in a way. And that's the experience globally and in the entrepreneur group where I'm working with a P40T in Germany, actually. But I think this region could also benefit from this. That's what I want to add. Thanks.
Thank you for summarizing this. And I think we have people like Ramy who are implementing some of these services, or many of them also on the ground. And perhaps to dive into one of the services more deeply, Ramy, I wanted you to maybe talk a bit more about how financing green businesses is different from financing other type of SMEs. And also, where do you see the access, but also the type of finance now in this region?
Thank you, Aline. That's a big question, but I'll try to look at it from different angles. I think financing is a core component, and it's the addition to what Lieve have talked about, which is making sure that those startups, scale-ups, and SMEs are ready to receive funds and scale. She's talked about different tools, mechanisms, support, which are basis for good governance, so those SMEs can raise capital and grow. Now, when we look at the type of financing for green businesses, there are many. And I think it's quite an interesting time because we see more and more potential funding, especially at grant level, for businesses that are starting or scaling. So in many countries, there are a number of programs where there are tickets between $1,000 up to $20,000 or $30,000 where they are there to move from an idea into a minimum viable product or an MVP that could be something that could scale beyond. There are technical support, and I think there's more and more of this. But then we see a bit of a gap, and I think this is where we need to start looking at what Johannes have talked about, impact investing, impact support, angels that look at green businesses as a business that have return, but not necessarily 10x return, where there is potential for people to invest. Also, it's time for governments and development agencies to look at it as a potential. Sometimes there's a lot of interest in nice stories in numbers. Let's look at 100 startups that we've supported with tickets of $5,000. That's great. But then what happened after we finish this grant? What happened? They are still fragile. There's still a lot to be done. So here we need to look at different type of support. It could be a matching, a de-risking, anything that could happen. Then we have some larger scale tickets, grants that are there to scale, like the Water Energy for Food program, where we could give tickets of up to $300,000. And with that, for example, we can use it for multiple tools. We can use it for what we call a first loss investment, where an investment firm could use it to help them do due diligence, to take risks, and so on, and be more enticed to invest in a green business. So that's one angle. There is also the potential to use it to create partnerships or use it to scale. So you subsidize the product with buyers, you get them to test it, you create a market, you create a viable model, investors will be excited about the volume, they can do that. So these are grant types. And then we look at the other products. So there is more lending that is linked to green. So here we look at institutions like IFC, like some banks, local banks that are institutional banks and so on, that are putting some funds to support in terms of loans that are facilitating the integration of green. And here we see big players like the Green Climate Fund, IFC, and others that are playing a role in this type of investments. And again, when we talk loans, we talk low risk. So it becomes more and more difficult for people to take. And this is where sometimes grants could play a role as smart investment to help those businesses to scale. Then there is equity. And here we look at impact funds. There's Al-Fanar, for example, between Egypt, Lebanon, and Jordan. There are other funds. There are funds focused on women entrepreneurs that people can tap to, funds that are focused on youth entrepreneurship that the people can tap to. So open up your eyes to opportunities. That's my message to the entrepreneurs in the room. There are funds, but they don't come down like rain. There is work to be done. There's governance that needs to be set. There's hard work to be presented. And there are players in the ecosystem that are there to support. So tap into those ecosystems, tap into the support, but be serious about the support you're taking and the time you're investing into this support, because it's a give and take. The more you give to support your business, the more the people that are supporting you are willing to support you even more. So it's a give and take. Don't take this for granted. Hard work is needed.
Thank you, Ramy. I think you have a lot of insights how complex financing these businesses is, and that we need to tweak a lot of the instruments we have, and we cannot just leave that to financial institutions, but we need to use the experience of the entrepreneurs, of the support organizations, and of the financing institutions together.
And we have a work.
You got, yeah.
They cut me off. Okay, and we have a role to play as policymakers, as business support organization to lobby for change. Because again, the investment landscape is true that there is some modalities and availability, but it's still not yet fully there. There's a lot of work to be done, and we have a lot of work to be done. So the entrepreneurs have work to do, but we also as business support organization, policymakers, have a lot to do to understand the needs and create the facilities needed to scale that sector at a much faster rate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ramy. Now the last question I have is for Johannes. And it's quite similar to what Mohamed said before, that we have a lot of challenges. We might not have the framework yet, we might not have the policies yet, but still, I mean, that's the moment to get started. And Johannes is also always a step ahead and likes to start ideas when you feel the market is maybe not yet ready, and where perhaps also green businesses feel there is no awareness or willingness or ability to pay for my solutions. So I would like to know from Johannes, how do you still get started if you are in such markets where you come in with solutions that are maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead?
I would call it question mark management. I think, we tend to just start as soon as everything is clear and as soon as we have all the critical points and risk assessments on the paper, but, that's just, in quite a few cases, it's too slow to really place new business ideas on the market, probably, which pop up just years ahead. That was the case with CVAS. When we started CVAS, approximately 12 to 13 years ago, in the meanwhile, quite a few people thought that's a stupid idea, actually this kind of water and sanitation, and then, you place here new enterprises, you do startup processes, for donor organizations, thought, private sector. But, then it took 5 years and we were in the market. I think it's really about daring things. It's really about really being able and accepting that you start, even if quite a lot of question marks are still there, because then you have a chance, and you call this, the first mover advantage, because then you are the guy, who placed something. So it's about daring, it's about handling, with question marks. And it brings me probably to my last thought. It's about, where we should actually invest into. We have to invest into people who do exactly with actually daring and accepting question marks, because these are the people who will really make a change in the future. So instead of just waiting for all of the investment readiness, and all, the papers, just look at the people. Think about, are these guys able to make the change? And if so, then you invest.
Thank you, Johannes, for closing this panel with a lot of positivity. And I hope this is what you're feeling, and you take the energy and the drive for the rest of the day, and we got you more excited for green businesses and the green sector. Now, there are 3 things that I just want to mention. The real experts are, of course, also the businesses and entrepreneurs that we don't have sitting here on the stage right now, but they are upstairs, and we have more than a dozen businesses from the region that have amazing green innovations, and I would like to encourage you to go upstairs and talk to them, because they can tell you even more than we can tell you. So please don't be shy and use the time between the sessions to do that. Then in the afternoon at 3 o'clock, we'll have a workshop on green business models and technologies. So this is a more interactive, small discussion where you can engage and discuss with us one-on-one. So if you want to dive even deeper, please come to that, and we'll be happy to chat even more. And last but not least, Ramy mentioned the We4F program. We have a booth right in the beginning of the opportunity zone. If you want to find more about that type of support program, the type of businesses that are within that program, please pass by and we're happy to also discuss that with you further. Thank you so much, and thanks for the panelists.